I don't know my real name. The one they gave me, subject for 1 delta, wasn't meant to be remembered. It was a label, not an identity. A placeholder in a system that feeds on erasure. But deep beneath their synthetic memory wipe, in the soft, static hum between dreams and disassociation, something remained. A whisper that wasn't supposed to survive. They said forgetting was mercy. That detaching us from who we were made the new world easier to live in. They were wrong. The first time I felt the glitch, I was walking through compound Delta 7, a corridor of chrome and silence, walls pulsing with soft biometric scans. Everything was sterile perfect in that clinical, horrifying way. Every face around me wore that same empty calm, a calm not earned but installed. We moved like ghosts, programmed to mimic routine. Then came the tremor, not of the floor, but of the mind, a flash, a smell, cinnamon and rust, a laugh my own, a voice calling me by another name. That name, it struck like a forgotten anthem, unraveling the stillness in me. I staggered. Monitors nearby registered it as anomaly in cognitive rhythm. They sent a recalibrator to realign me, but I lied. I told them I was tired, that my rhythm was fine, that I consented to another cycle of clarity. They smiled and logged it. Reassuringly, they said I'd feel more myself soon, but which self? That night, I dreamt of a forest, not a simulation, a real one. I could feel the earth breathing beneath my bare feet. Leaves swayed above me, but they carried no surveillance drones. I wasn't running. I wasn't hiding. I was ... someone not in that dream. A girl placed a hand on my shoulder. Her face blurred but familiar. She whispered, "They replaced your soul." When I woke, I was crying. You're not supposed to cry here. Emotions beyond protocol are flagged. So I went to the washroom pod and pretended to sneeze. I let the tears mix with artificial soap. The mirror didn't recognize my facial ID for 3 seconds. It hesitated. So did I. The next day, I skipped my memory alignment therapy. That's when the eyes followed me harder. Not people, devices. The eyes in the ceilings. The drones without sound. The data ghosts that skim your patterns and cross-check your emotions. The system thought I was breaking. It was right. I started noticing others. Not many, but a few. Subtle things. A prolonged stare at a child's drawing on the wall. Someone lingering near a restricted terminal. Someone touching their temple after a word they couldn't place. We didn't talk. That was forbidden. We're the fractured dot not fully restored, not completely erased. I began carving the word remnant into places only I could find. Beneath my bunk, on the inner ridge of my sterilization glove, in the code of my digital profile. Had to believe there were others. That I wasn't hallucinating freedom. And then I met her. She was part of the archive division, tasked with preserving usable fragments of what they called pre-collapse humanity. They said her job was to ensure our transition to the new order remained uncontaminated by the irrational past. But she looked at me too long. Her eyes weren't hollow. She passed me a file once by accident, they said. It was misfiled. She apologized and took it back. But in that split second, I saw a photo. A group of people, a birthday cake. A boy holding a wooden train. The boy was me. The memory hit like static fire. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. It was a torrent of warmth and pain and being. Not data, not implanted narrative. Memory, my memory. The room pulsed. I stumbled into the hallway and vomited. They sent a neural stabilizer drone to monitor me. I pretended it was food poisoning. They adjusted my nutrients, gave me a manual on maintaining mental resilience in the new self. I burned it. Something had broken loose. A dam within the false serenity. Every second after that was agony and clarity combined. I began writing down what I remembered. Illegally, of course. Paper is restricted in compound Delta 7, but I found a discarded maintenance logbook and a pen tip hidden in a vent. The first sentence I wrote was, "I was not born in this system." The second, "They did not create me, they unmade me." The more I wrote, the more I remembered my mother's perfume, my brother's laugh, the smell of rain, and then a name. Not subject 41, Delta. Not remnant, my name. But I won't write it here. Not yet. It's the only thing they haven't taken from me. If I say it now, they'll find it. They'll rewrite me again. Because that's what the program does. It doesn't kill. It replaces. But the worst part, some of them chose it. They lined up to forget. They begged for peace at the cost of identity. And now I walk among them. My past intact and burning like a forbidden light inside me. They think I'm still compliant, but I'm remembering faster now. And memory is the most dangerous virus they never planned for. They didn't see the change, not at first, because change, when engineered properly, does not announce itself with noise or flame. It moves like smoke through a vent, silent, scentless, invisible. It finds the cracks in the system, the overlooked redundancies, the forgotten subroutines. The mind's already on the edge of dissonance and nestles there, growing without attention. That's how her thought lived in me. It didn't shout, it whispered. And the whisper sounded like my own voice. At first, I thought it was an error in the loop. Something in the neural map was off. A familiar corridor now turned left instead of right. A sentence from a coworker repeated twice. The coffee tasted slightly different every morning, as if the algorithm responsible for flavor had degraded by a fraction. These were small things. Things only a person already suspicious would notice, and I had become suspicious of everything. Her message, the one she embedded in my recall, wasn't words. It was a sensation, a ghost feeling. It wrapped around moments I thought I understood and made them feel ... wrong. Like the time I watched a child play in the atrium and felt sadness, though I didn't know why, or when a colleague laughed at a joke, and the sound echoed strangely in my skull, as if it didn't belong in that reality. She hadn't told me what to do. She had planted a question. What if your memories were not yours? That question unraveled everything. Once it took hold, I couldn't stop myself. I began comparing every thought, every reaction, every instinct. Were they mine? Or had they been inserted during my nightly sync? I stopped sleeping. That alone was considered a punishable deviation, but I disguised the blackout as a firmware bug. I simulated sleep while staying awake, monitoring my own mind like a man. Watching a prison door he suspects might already be open. That's when I saw it. The overlay, it would flash for only a frame-like static between channels. A different image, not aligned with the environment. It felt like a bleed from a memory, not quite erased, and then another. A name I'd never spoken, but felt deeply familiar. A face, hers. She wasn't from my original cohort. That much I could verify. There were no records of her in the citizen index, no employment logs, no neural pattern signatures. She shouldn't exist. But I remembered her smile. I remembered the texture of her voice. I remembered the way she looked at me, like she saw me not the role, not the assigned ID. But me, it terrified me, because I'd been conditioned to believe I was not anyone before the sync. That was the foundation of our society. You are born during your first wake cycle. Anything before that is noise, dangerous, unstable, corruptive. To remember is to betray stability. And yet, I remembered, so I did what any virus does when it becomes aware of its host. I replicated. I began testing others. Subtle things, conversational landmines designed to trigger forgotten pathways. I asked them about colors they liked before they chose their palette. I used words that had fallen out of official vocabulary, like mother and fear and hope. And a few of them, paused. A few of them hesitated. That hesitation was all I needed. I knew the system would detect it. The surveillance I didn't monitor only what we said, tracked timing, micro-expressions, thermal shifts, cardiac irregularities. But I had embedded a loop delay in the telemetry feed, buying me 10 seconds before the anomalies triggered. Alerts, 10 seconds to find the spark, 10 seconds to light the match. I called it the echo dot. It was a data packet, simple, recursive, and elegant. It could be spoken aloud, embedded in a gesture, or hidden in eye contact. Once perceived, it accessed the subject's suppressed memories, not all of them, just enough to create dissonance. The system could correct dissonance, but not distributed dissonance. Not when it happened in 1,000 minds at once, triggered by divergent methods, rippling through sectors faster than the AI could patch. I didn't need an army. I needed enough to reach critical mass, enough to overwhelm the correctional feedback loops, enough to make the illusion tremble. I watched it happen slowly, beautifully. A man in the cafeteria stopped mid-bite, staring into nothing for a full minute. A woman in sanitation smiled at me without knowing why. A child drew a symbol that hadn't been used in the system since the days of collapse. The system noticed. It accelerated recalibration. Sleep cycles were shortened. Neural audits increased. Memory pulses became more aggressive. They tried to flood us with new data to overwrite the drift. But they were too late. The minds had already fractured. The illusion was compromised. And then, without warning, she returned, not in memory, but in flesh. She walked into my corridor, unregistered, her steps quiet but unafraid. No alarms, no alerts. The system didn't even recognize her, and I understood she had never been part of the system. She was its origin. She had designed the first simulation, the first architecture of FORGET, and then she had turned against it. Her message had not been a warning. It was a key I had swallowed without knowing, a key that had opened every door I had once believed was part of reality. She didn't need to speak when we met again. Her eyes held the same gravity I remembered, not from the recordings, but from the dream behind the dream. The one I had never dared to believe was real. She touched my forehead, and for the first time in my constructed life, saw the world as it was before. I tried to stay invisible after that night. Every trace of rebellion had to be erased, not from the world, but from myself. I stopped taking the routes I once loved. Those streets where our footsteps echoed together like faint whispers. I stopped looking up at the towers where fragments of her memory still clung to the glass. I tried to unsee her silhouette in the flickering lights of the city's skyline. But the mind is cruel-lit, doesn't obey silence. It replays. It revolts. The moment I refused the cleansing, I became incompatible with the system, and incompatibility in this city is a form of infection. They didn't send enforcers. That's not how they do it anymore. They sent doubt in waves, in faces, in people I once trusted. First came the interruptions, familiar voices, now hesitant. Then came the redirections, co-workers who swore we'd never met, family whose eyes slid over me like I was glass. Finally came the distortions. At first, I thought I was paranoid. But the city is precise when it erases you. It doesn't just delete, it overwrites. She appeared again. Not her, the new her. Same smile, same name. But different gaze. They gave her new thoughts, new desires, new memories, and placed her back into my world as if nothing had ever happened. The woman who once held my mind in her silence now looked through me with programmed curiosity. "I don't know you," she said, "the day we crossed paths again. But you look familiar." They'd done it, not just to her, but to us, to what we were, to what we knew. I nodded, pretending I didn't care, pretending it didn't feel like being stabbed by the very memories I fought to preserve. And still, something in her flinched. A microsecond too long. A hesitation that algorithms can't code. I saw it. The old her caged behind the facade. A blink of rebellion. But that's when I realized the truth. They didn't just replace her thoughts. They archived the original's dash somewhere. I became obsessed with finding it. Not for her, not even for me, but for the idea that memory, real memory, could survive even after total erasure. That's when I found the archivist. He lived beneath the spine of the city in the ruins of the first district ever digitized. He looked like a man who hadn't spoken to another soul in years. Dust clung to him like time itself refused to forget him. He didn't ask why I came. "You're infected," he said, simply, "by grief or truth." Same thing these days. I told him everything about her, about what they did, about the glitch in her response. He listened without blinking. Then he showed me the black maps. They were memory paths, decrypted signals of pre-altered minds. Some were too corrupted to follow. Others led to dead ends. But a few pulsed with living data. He showed me hers. It was there buried, fragmented, but breathing, stored in an obsolete server nested beneath the Ministry of Clarity. A server no longer used because the data it contained was too unstable. Unstable, he whispered, just means honest. But accessing it would mean exposing myself. Not just to them, but to everything they've stored, everything they've erased. Memory is not linear in their archive. It is layered, chaotic, recursive. You don't just recover one person. You fall into all of them. He gave me a choice. Walk away, he said, and remember her the way you do now. Half-lit, half-true, but yours. Or dive in and risk becoming another erased file with a pulse. I chose the dive because even if I forgot myself along the way, I needed her to be real again somewhere in someone's mind. The plan was madness, but madness is the last refuge of memory in a city built to forget. I spent nights decoding the layers, feeding the coordinates into corrupted access points. The city, meanwhile, kept shifting. Ads blinked messages only I could see. Conform to heal. Forget to live. Erase to belong. But I didn't belong anymore. I was the echo in a clean room, the noise in a perfect signal. And then, on the 12th night, I found her dot. Not the body, not the smile, but her thoughts. They came as fragments, her fear. During the first rewrite, her resistance, her refusal to let go of the name of our meeting place. The sound of rain that reminded her of us. I felt her emotions pour into me like warm static. She had tried to anchor herself. She had fought the replacement, and she had failed. But not before leaving a trail, a breadcrumb of self, a memory of defiance. I wept not because she was gone, but because I knew someone had to carry this. Someone had to be the vessel for what they tried to erase. I downloaded everything, encrypted it, split it into 1,000 sequences. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, only that if I stored them inside me, they'd come for me too. But I'd already made peace with that. What I hadn't made peace with was the possibility that she might remember me too somewhere. Deep inside the lie, I had to see her again to know if she could still feel it, even a flicker, even a glitch. The city's heartbeat had changed. Every light flickered with suspicion. Every whisper carried the weight of unspoken truths. I was no longer a ghost walking among the erased. I was a shadow, growing longer with every secret I uncovered. After the revelation of the archivist, I dove deeper into the network's veins. The hidden circuits beneath the concrete skeleton of the metropolis. It was a labyrinth of memories, a digital necropolis where souls had been disassembled and catalogued. The program wasn't just about control. It was a war against existence itself. They wanted to replace us, to erase the chaos of human memory and install a perfect, compliant narrative. But in the shadows, resistance bloomed. Fragments of rebellion coalesced like fireflies in the dark. I became a virus. Each memory I recovered was a spark. Each fragment I decrypted was a flame. They hunted me like a plague, their enforcers tracing the faintest data trails. But my resolve hardened. I was no longer afraid. The line between who I was and who I was becoming blurred, but I embraced the ambiguity. I was neither the erased nor the eraser. I was the fault line tearing through their digital utopia. One night, beneath a sky obscured by neon smog, I hacked into the core archive. The air crackled with electric tension as I navigated the streams of forbidden data. Faces flashed past, some familiar, some lost forever. The program's blueprint unfolded like a dark poem, revealing its intricate web of control and deceit. Then I found her, not the woman they forced to forget, but the real her, preserved in fragments of data buried beneath layers of firewalls and false memories. Her digital soul, scattered yet alive, called to me through the code. I reached for her essence. But as my fingers brushed the final encryption, alarms screamed through the system. They knew I was there. The countdown began. I barely escaped the collapse of the core. The network convulsed behind me. A dying beast lashing out at its attacker. The price of memory was clear. Survival demanded sacrifice. My presence was a breach, a rupture in the perfect program. I had become the threat they feared, the anomaly their system could not purge. Yet the victory was bittersweet. The woman's essence was incomplete, fractured like glass. Saving her meant exposing myself fully. The program would come from me, not as a machine, but as a hunter chasing a phantom. But I was ready. For the first time, I understood the power of remembrance. Memory was not a prison. It was a weapon, a rebellion coded in neurons and data packets. And as I disappeared into the labyrinth of forgotten souls, I carried a promise to reclaim what they tried to erase, to ignite the revolution. In the minds of the annulados, the city had become a battlefield not marked by guns or blood, but by memories and willpower. Every move I made was a calculated strike against the silent war waged on the minds of the erased. They wanted me gone, erased like the rest, but I had become more than a subject. I was a symbol of defiance, a living glitch in their perfect code. After narrowly escaping the core's collapse, I found refuge in the under levels of the city-forgotten tunnels where the hum of machines mingled with whispers of revolution. Here, the air was thick with the scent of rust and hope. Others, like me, gathered in the shadows, fragmented minds, wary eyes, souls resisting erasure. They called themselves the remnants. Each carried a story, a stolen past they clung to like life itself. Histories weaving a tapestry of rebellion, one memory at a time. I led them not by command, but by example, a beacon of remembrance in a sea of oblivion. But the program was relentless. It sent new agents, bioengineered and ruthless, to infiltrate our ranks. They were not just hunters, they were reminders of what awaited failure. Each capture meant a life rewritten, a mind sanitized, a soul replaced. One night, the agents had found us. Chaos erupted. We scattered like shadows, chased by light. I ran through labyrinthine corridors, the echo of footsteps pounding behind me. But even as fear surged, my resolve hardened. I was fighting for more than survivally, was fighting for the right to remember in a hidden alcove. I activated an old transmitter, sending a signal encoded with the echo virus. It rippled through the city's network, a digital contagion designed to awaken minds, to fracture the illusion of control. And it worked. Across the metropolis, anomalies multiplied. Minds flickered with forbidden memories. People paused, confused, yet enlightened. The program's grip loosened, but with every victory came a cost. The program adapted, deploying psychological warfare, visions, dreams manipulated to confuse and divide. Allies vanished without a trace. I felt the isolation tighten like a noose. Yet I pressed on, because the memories we reclaimed were not just our own, they were the blueprint for freedom. A collective consciousness hidden beneath layers of artificial forgetting in the darkest hours. I remembered her smile, her touch, the rebellion in her eyes. She had been the first spark. Now, she was the revolution. The final confrontation was not fought in the streets or behind barricades, but in the depths of the mind. The program, sensing its unraveling, unleashed its most potent weapon. The rewrite protocol, a neural overwrite, so complete, so invasive, that it promised to erase every trace of rebellion, every fragment of self, every flicker of memory. I felt the pressure first as a low hum behind my thoughts, a static crackling that grew louder, trying to drown the defiance within me. The rewrite was relentless, breaking down walls, burning synapses, flooding my consciousness with sanitized narratives and fabricated loyalties. But resistance had become my nature. The memories she had planted were no longer just hers or mine. They belonged to all of us who refused to vanish. I fought back with every pulse of my being, weaving the echo virus deep into my neural pathways, creating a feedback loop that destabilized the rewrite. My mind became a battlefield of light and shadow, a storm of identity clashing against imposed oblivion. The program tried to isolate me, severing connections, fragmenting my consciousness, but the network I had helped build in the shadows responded. Remnants from every corner of the city reached out, reinforcing the signal, strengthening the resistance. In that storm, I saw her face, clear, unblurred, defiant. She was not just memory or ghost. She was the pulse that refused to die. Together, we shattered the illusion. The city trembled as the system faltered, its perfect facade cracking under the weight of awakened minds. I was no longer just a threat. I was the catalyst. The revolution in the minds of the erased had begun. If this story of memory, identity, and rebellion resonated with you, don't let it fade away. Subscribe now to join the journey through the shadows of forgotten souls. Share your thoughts. What does it mean to truly remember? Stay with us, because the revolution in the minds of the erased is only beginning. The next chapter will reveal what happens when memories fight back.